Hello! Today's stories come from r/MaliciousCompliance. We have 4 Reddit stories today. Our first is the only typical workplace scenario before 3 funny ones. Story 1 is titled, Break the Law? Sure thing, boss. Sign here, please. Longtime stalker, first time poster. Only doing this now because it finally came to fruition last week. I used to work as a spare parts estimator for a fairly niche industry. My job was essentially to work out what parts of our main product the customer wanted, find out how much it would cost us to make, add a little markup, and send them a quote. My boss was pretty strict on traceability, so everything needed to be recorded, including why a certain markup had been applied to a particular product. Normal value of these quotes is somewhere between £200 and a few $100,000. Very rarely do we get orders for anything more than that, once or twice a decade in my experience. A request for quotation landed on my desk when I was working from home during COVID, and it was a biggie. Just looking at the list of parts the customer wanted, this was going to be an absolute killer, over £1 million all by itself. I was told by the sales guy that if this one went well, there was another to follow of an even bigger size, ultimately looking at 10 million over the next 4 years. So I set to work. Normally, I can do 5 or 6 of these quotes in a day, but this one quote took me 6 weeks to put together. I was in constant contact with 20 plus vendors getting specifications, technical details, prices, and lead times for over 400 items. Finally, my masterpiece was complete. Then came the snag. Sales guy then says that because of the country this customer is in, they need to have 4 or more quotes in from different suppliers. This is in order to get it cleared by their government, some anti corruption policy that had been instituted. We were the original equipment manufacturer of the product, and there's nowhere else on the planet they could get these parts from. So we'd have to work through third parties to get it done. And he knew just the guy. In comes a one-man band with a dodgy-looking entry at company's house to save the day. Sales guy and him go way back, so he was going to be the preferential supplier. I was asked to do the normal quote to him, then to bump the prices up by 30% and send that to 3 other companies who had been asking about it. This would mean that they would absolutely not get the contract with the end user. I argued the point, saying that the whole purpose of the anti-corruption policy is to prevent situations exactly like this. But I was overruled. The chief operating officer of the company now tells me to just do it over a phone call, at which point I request that in writing before I go ahead and do it. Fast forward 2 years and there's still no order been placed. Then I find out through a different sales guy that the one-man band has been put on a blacklist by this country's government over this project. The other 3 companies had been turned down, and the end user is asking other companies to come in and take our product out and replace it with their own. A huge investigation is called for by senior management. My quote is ripped to pieces and examined in microscopic detail, and the question gets asked. Why did you give different prices to these competitors when you knew it was all to do with anti-corruption? We should fire you. That's millions of pounds worth of orders we've lost. Out comes the email from my little black book. On the desk it goes. Everyone suddenly gets very quiet. And the COO starts packing his desk in a box the next week. And the moral of the story is, if someone tells you to do something borderline illegal, make sure to get it in writing. Edit. For those asking about the legality of what I did, because all of the third parties were outside of the country where the anti-corruption policy was in place. I didn't personally break any laws. Whilst the anti-corruption policies are in place for the end user, the worst the government can do is put us on a blacklist. All of our bids in the future are either refused outright or looked at in far more detail than others might be. I did investigate this at the time, and if there were going to be any implications on me that my company wouldn't have been responsible for, it would have been a flat no. I was acting against the intention of the policy, but not expressly breaking it. Do not do something illegal just because your boss told you to. The issue, as far as the company was concerned, was the lost millions in revenue and the damage to their reputation. This was because the end user is a huge company with contacts and is in a reasonably close-knit industry. People talk. They ultimately wanted a scapegoat to parade in front of the board to explain why the multi-million-pound deal they'd all been talking about for the last 2 years had suddenly vanished. I did also look at original equipment manufacturers' angle at the time, but because we aren't the only company who makes this type of product, it didn't appear to be possible to use this as an exception. The reason being that the option existed to replace our system with a competitor's. Edit 2. After posting this, I did a bit of research into the final customer, and their VP of Finance did some fairly well publicized jail time a few years back. He was charged for buying an oil rig for the company at a suspiciously low price. So there was no way we would have been able to convince the government that everything was above board with a direct sale. CYA rule of thumb: get it in writing. I don't think all bosses are willing to provide instruction in writing, though, especially if it's something shady. That's why, when working for a boss or employer like this, it's best to have a habit of sending confirmation emails, just in case. Let's check out the top comments before we get into the funny ones. Not all who ponder are lost shared. I once typed an email outlining the impact of delaying paying a vendor for preventative crossed out and replaced with preventive maintenance on a machine they ran for us. Not doing the maintenance could result in the machine crashing and being down sometime for repairs. I printed it and added a handwritten note. Quote, I will take the action but will not be responsible for the consequences. Please sign below acknowledging that you accept the consequences of delaying this maintenance. End quote. I placed this on my colleague's desk. A few minutes after he returned to his desk, he approved the money for the maintenance. Daniel B. Weston said, exactly. If you don't schedule maintenance, the machine will schedule it for you. Throwaway said, anytime someone who's a subject matter expert says, I need you to put that in writing, to a superior, it means they know crap's gonna go down eventually, and they're making sure they have their own butt covered. Wide Consequence added, it might have been in the sub, but I recently read a story where the guy's way of saying it was, I can do it the right way on my own. If you want me to do it the wrong way, I need it in writing. Story 2 gets hot and steamy with a little wordplay. It is titled, Getting Kinky with My Frigid Roommate. I used to rent a room in my old roommate's condo. We generally got along, but he was a bit stingy and would get really anal about certain things that affected me unfairly as a paying roommate. The biggest point of contention was the thermostat. I liked to be comfortable and would keep it at 70. He preferred 65 to save money, even though he was well off. I tried to compromise, but it descended into us each moving the thermostat when the other left. Finally, he put his foot down and said it has to stay at 65. Unfortunately for my roommate, I had learned about bimetallic strips that old thermostats used to gauge temperature. Two different metals are back to back in a coil. As one expands more than the other, the coil unwinds and turns the furnace on or off. Knowing this, I agreed to keep it at 65. But I didn't agree not to put a teensy tiny kink in the strip behind the dial to change what 65 meant to the furnace. Several times he thought, it's not stupidly cold in here, and started obsessively checking the dial to catch me red-handed. He was so confused when it was exactly at 65 every time. Eventually, he started setting it even cooler to compensate. But with a subtle kink here or there, I managed to stay comfortable while keeping the peace. Oh my gosh, this is too funny. And I say that as a person who is always willing to throw on a sweater to save some money. Let's dive into the comments, where the comedy continues with one of the most unintentionally hilarious comments I've ever read. Cal Wayne said, looks at title, I saw what you did there. OP replied, luckily, he didn't. Kicking Tires said, it's not often a clickbait title actually delivers more than expected. A plus. Whistle Ridge added, my wife keeps it at 58 to 61 in the house. Because we live in an old house in Canada and heating is sometimes $600 per week in the winter. I get that. But 65 wouldn't break the bank. I am 100% using this to avoid fights. Edit. We have done all the things. The house is recently insulated. We have new windows and doors. We've caulked and foam sealed all the gaps, etc. It's just a big house, old farmhouse in a rural area. And propane is expensive as F right now. And I love my wife, but She's cheap. We're switching to geothermal in a year or two, but for now, all I can do is carry a space heater room to room with me and be miserable. Absolute Zero said, So, gaslighting then. Eh? Get it? Gas lighting? It's igniting the furnace. It's literal and figurative. Pure genius. Story 3 has a business teaming up against an outrageous customer. It's titled, I'll Get the Manager. Way back in the year 2000, I worked at a big box store with the yellow tag logo. I had been there for 18 months as a cashier. We recently got a new operations manager who came from computer sales and didn't really know the registers that well. This happened during his first week as manager. It started with an interaction I had with a customer. I said, Okay, sir, that will be X dollar amount. Fine, here. Toss his card onto the counter. Card declined. Sorry, sir, your card declined. I can run it again, or we can try another card if you'd like. Run it again. I know there's over $1,000 on that card. It should work. Swipes card again. Declined again. Sorry, sir, it was declined again. It has to work. Is there anything else you can do to approve it? I can try to run it manually, but that will only help if your magnet strip is damaged. Try that then. Manually enter details. Declined again. There must be some way to force or bypass that. I know there is money on the card. I'm sorry, sir. If it's declined by the card company, there's nothing I can do. This is horse rock. I know there is money on that card. Get your manager now. Okay, sir, just a moment. Manager approaches and stands behind the counter next to me. Hello, sir. How can I help you? Your employee keeps declining my card, and I know there is plenty of money on the card. You need to override it. Manager attempts to run the card. Declined. Again. Sorry, sir. It was declined. I know that. You need to override it so I can take my stuff and go home. Manager turns 90 degrees to face me. It declined. Is there anything we can do to override it? No, sir. That decline is from the card company. There is nothing else we can do. Manager turns 90 degrees back to angry customer. I'm sorry, sir. I've spoken with one of our experts and he informs me that there is nothing else we can do with this card. Would you like to sign up for our card and save 10% on your purchase today? Customer angrily stomps out of the store. Okay, so the upsell failed, but that is one heck of a manager. I wish there were more people like this manager supporting frontline staff. There are similar thoughts in the comments, but also someone unfamiliar with Am I the Butthole terminology asking a simple and innocent question. Let's check it out. Rico said, When I read new manager, didn't know what they were doing with the register, is assumed it was a story against them. To my surprise, they were the star. Fit Mays added, That was a nice surprise ending, smiley emoji. Definitely assumed it would be the new manager being TA. Not knowing that was a reference to being a butthole, someone then asked something like, What does TA stand for? And Reddit did what Reddit does. Stubborn Kindness said, Titanic anus. Escapist Fugue added, Oh no, you've sunken my butthole. Anon for Too Many Reasons said, New manager handled it perfectly. That is a great example of a manager being a true leader. OP replied, They pulled him up to corporate in less than a year. Best retail boss I ever had. Vergenberg added, Wait. You're telling me upper corporate management actually recognized a skilled individual and promoted them accordingly? What kind of twisted world do you live in? Story 4 will get you a buzz with cringe. It's titled, You Want to be notified every time I brush my teeth? No problem. This is a smaller one, and it happened when I was still living in a student dorm the first few years of university. Each room in my dorm had their own sink with showers and toilets in a shared space, so you could at least brush your teeth and get ready in peace. I happened to have a next door roommate who I very seldom saw due to our schedules. However, you could hear the water running from time to time. I have an electric toothbrush, which is important for the story. One day, I was brushing my teeth as usual and rushing out the door to university when said roommate came out of his room with a wolfish grin. One last, You can just call me next time you feel the need to run the electric thing in your room. At first, I didn't get it. Then I was quite disgusted, as he obviously thought I was using my vibrator twice a day and had put more thought into this than I'd liked. While I do own several toys, my bed was on the complete opposite end of the room, so as far away from the shared wall as possible. At night, I was still disgusted by his behavior when I got the idea to just do what he wanted me to. So I grabbed my toothbrush, knocked on his door, and smiled as sweetly as possible. Neighbor, I need to use my electric device now, and since you offered your help, his face lit up until I shoved my toothbrush in his face and realization dawned. I've never seen anyone turn this red this fast. For the next few weeks, I knocked on his door every time I brushed my teeth. And since I decided my dental hygiene was a priority now, I upped brushing my teeth from twice to thrice a day. He got super uncomfortable every time I knocked and asked him about dental hygiene tips. But he never was creepy towards me again. Who would be so bold as to say something? My goodness. I love the way OP handled the situation, though. Rather than just letting it go, she really dug in and taught her neighbor a lesson that needed to be learned. Don't be creepy and mind your own business. Let's jump to the comments where the wordplay continues. Juneberger said, "As a dentist, this makes me so incredibly happy." NASA Pigs added, "As an insurance worker, I am filled with uncontrollable rage." Naughty Mind, naughty spelled Knotty, shared, "OMG, the edit reminds me of an embarrassing story. Back when I was young, single, and living in an apartment building, I thought I heard my downstairs neighbor moaning. It sounded hot, and I got excited. As I continued to listen, I realized that the moans were very consistent, same tempo and volume, and they were coming from inside my room. My cat was snoring. The little whistle his snore made sounded just like a woman moaning. Dizzy Dizzy Wigglebop said, "You've just got a naughty mind." If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thanks, and bye for now.